All right, Neo, that's we're gonna have to put that on pause. You asked me about what I had mentioned that I was
Yeah,
doing.
what your project is.
Yeah, and I said it was a vocabulary for sort of a theory or framework for talking about the mind.
Hmm.
But um, and maybe we'll have time for me to talk about another time.
Okay.
But speaking of which, what is your understanding of the mind?
My understanding of the mind.
Where is the mind?
Where is the mind? Hmm. Oh my God, I don't know how I'm ready to like go. I don't know I don't know how
Oh,
to
sorry,
describe it.
I was distracted thinking about this joint, so I didn't realize you might have felt a bit on the spot. Hold on a second.
No, good. Where is the mind? Oof.
Let me ask you this. Uh, what's the soul? Do you have a soul?
Yeah, I believe we have a soul. We all have a soul.
Are you religious?
I wouldn't say religious. No.
Does Neo have a soul?
Yeah, for sure.
What about that tree?
Yeah.
What about this vehicle?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how would you define the soul?
The soul is like,
Oh, sorry, it's bright.
yeah, for me, the soul is like the spirit or the energy that something has, that something transmits. Like, yeah, the energy that it gives out.
I'm hearing words,
Yeah.
but I'm not able to sort of imagine or can we? What do those things mean? What is,
Mm,
for instance, emotions? Is that a
yeah.
job of the soul?
Emotions,
Yeah,
if it's the job of the soul, no, I don't think
that's a job
so.
of what? The
Um,
elbow,
the elbow. um, no, I think the emotions, it's more of a job from the mind
the mind.
and the body as well. I mean, it's a combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mind and the body, you said, but we haven't figured out where the mind is yet. So
No,
is the mind and the body, are they this could be they be the same thing?
I mean, I see the mind part of the body.
It's part of the body.
Yeah, but it like comes out from it's
You're
the awareness.
gesturing around your head right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of the mind, for me, I think of the brain.
Okay.
But I feel like there's much more than that,
And tell me
than
about
just the
that.
physical part.
So there's
Because
more.
the mind is,
Sorry, I'm listening.
yeah, no, I'm also trying to figure out the mind. Yeah, it's more than just the physical.
It's more than just the physical.
Yeah,
Can you give me a
because
maybe
it's
a
a
feature of the
tool,
mind?
a feature of the mind.
Yeah. So
Um,
emotions, was that a feature of the mind? Is that a thing that the mind does?
yeah,
The emotions are okay.
yeah.
But Neo, but then if I told you that like if we chose an emotion and I told you how that happens in the brain,
Mm,
would you be satisfied?
would I be satisfied hearing how the emotion works in my brain?
Yeah, how emotion is produced by the brain.
Mm,
Because the brain is physical.
yeah,
And
I think.
or is emotion not one of the non-physical aspects of the mind?
Mm, yeah, I don't know. I feel like to describe emotions from the mind doesn't feel really it like when I
Doesn't feel
feel
good.
good
And
for me.
that's one of my words actually.
Yeah.
Is shope. And so
Mm.
what shope means is when it just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Just feels wrong. Um, and then I have another word,
Mm-hmm.
Porsche, which is a thing that feels wrong but isn't
Mm.
necessarily wrong.
Mm.
And then there's the opposite of that. So this is to answer your question as well because you've been so nice in answering my questions. There's shope, which is something that kind of triggers a bad response. It just
Mm.
doesn't sound true.
Yeah,
Doesn't ring true.
because it feels like when you say the emotions come from the mind, it makes it feel like the at least from my perception, the mind is oftentimes overworking, exaggerating things, and it feels like it invalidates the emotions when I say that it comes from the mind.
Because it's as though if we
'Cause if we
identify the
decide-
source, then it makes them less true.
Yeah, somehow like this.
So this might be an example of a Porsche,
Because
which is something that shows, but
Mm.
shouldn't maybe.
Mm.
Because we're not programmed perfectly.
Yeah.
So sometimes things that don't feel true are true.
Mm-hmm. You came up with
Yeah,
this word?
Porsche. Yeah. Well, I didn't come
Or-
out with Porsche. It's just Shope, and then I thought. Anyway,
Mm.
and then if something sounds good, if it sounds
Yeah.
true, if your mechanisms are giving it a thumbs up,
Mhm.
I say it sings.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's something that sounds wonderful, but actually is wrong? Well, this is a siren, so from like,
Yeah.
so, politicians, advertisers, they're really
Yeah.
good at using sirens in
Mhm.
their presentations
Yeah.
to compel their audiences when their audiences shouldn't actually necessarily be compelled.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of things, a lot of Porsches. And so I've been interviewing people about the mind because psychology and neuroscience and evolutionary biology have answered or come up with a lot of cool answers
Mhm.
to some of the natural questions that we have about the mind. But there's a big difference between those answers
Mm-hmm.
and the answers that most humans will give about the mind.
Yeah.
So we tend to still sort of believe back when Plato was saying, we have this heart and this stomach, and a lot of people that I've interviewed, they say, oh no, I don't know what my brain does, but my heart is and my stomach are, me.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it feels wrong. The brain did not evolve to sort of be able to see itself as a brain.
Mm.
Do you accept evolution?
Yeah, I think.
Are you a creationist?
I don't really know if I've formed like strong opinions about that. I feel evolution, yeah, it makes sense to me, but I'm also open for that there's other possibilities.
Yeah.
Like it's not like for me the ultimate truth or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's never good to declare a truth as ultimate. Yeah. But also worthwhile accepting or working with or assuming ideas that have been demonstrated.
Yeah. Like I feel with science there's many things that I feel like it's on track, but I'm not gonna say that this is the truth, but I respect the work, the research, everything that's behind it.
But in your life,
But in my life,
you use the results of science assuming that it is true, right? Like you assume that if you plug in your phone that it's going to charge. You assume if you type a message and hit the send button. Then
with those things, yes, but like those examples feel like a bit different. But yeah, I feel looking at science, looking at my own experiences, looking at what my own experiences, what my body is telling me, especially if we think in terms of health.
Yeah.
I also feel it's valuable to hear other people's experiences and opinions.
Do you trust yourself more than the other people? Would you say that?
By other people, you mean science or?
Not necessarily, just like.
I feel.
If you feel that something is true,
Yeah.
and the person you're talking to feels that something else
true
is
for
true.
me. I can feel it's true for me, but it.
What would be an example of something that could be true for you, but not true for someone else?
For me, like a very common one that comes to me now is in terms of diet. Like I choose not to eat any animal products, but I'm also like not saying that everyone should eat the way that I do at all. Like I see that this is what how my body.
So what would be like a statement whose truth value we could judge? Like would the statement be that a vegetarian or vegan diet is what's best for my body?
Yeah, it's what I feel is best for my body. Yeah. And feels best for my body. And also my energy. I think like it's not just the physical part, but I feel also energetically.
But you think that like objectively you've noticed an improvement in your energy and in your well-being.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So then that would, I would accept that as true as well. I have no authority to judge that.
Yeah, just as I don't feel I have the authority to judge that other people can't feel good or shouldn't feel good with eating the opposite way that I do, you know?
Yeah.
So
What about for the environment? What about like the destruction of the planet?
yeah, I see that as an important point as well. In terms of how much resources animal products take.
Yeah.
And it's much more of an efficient way just to eat the plants themselves instead of feeding the plants to the animals and then eating the animals.
Yeah.
So I feel quite, like in terms of the environment, it's what I see as the better choice, but then again, you can also eat a vegan diet that's super shitty for the environment.
You can.
Like tons of packaged food, stuff that's been produced, things that are not local or in season, all of those things. So, I mean, yeah, it can just as much be an unhealthy vegan diet as it can be for me to eat maybe what would go against what I feel would be unhealthy for me, which would be eating meat or eating animal products.
Yeah.
Or not unhealthy, perhaps, but just what I don't feel good with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when talking about truth, and sometimes I think that people claim to believe in a relative truth, or in truth being relative, but don't actually, or certainly don't operate that way, but also don't actually. Like, for instance, like, have you never gotten in a disagreement?
Have I never gotten?
Yeah.
I've gotten in disagreements.
Because for me, a disagreement involves thinking that what that person is saying is false, even though it feels true to them.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is true. And there's only room for one.
I mean, I think you can still have a disagreement and see that the other person has their truth as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't agree with it, you know?
You don't agree with it. What does that mean? Because to me, I don't agree that it's true.
I don't feel it's true for me, but it can be true for somebody else.
So yeah, definitely. There are things that can be true when applied to their body or their mind. Or beneficial maybe when applied to their body or their mind, and not beneficial when applied to yours.
Yeah.
And so then we would have two truth statements there.
Yeah.
That is objectively beneficial to them, and it is objectively not beneficial to you.
Yeah.
So, like, you and I can't disagree on ice cream. Like, I can say that my favorite is blank, and you can say that your favorite is blank. There's no disagreement there.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to say that there is a flavor that is the best, I'm going to ask you to define what do you mean by best. You say, well, what I mean by that is that it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Then I'll say, oh, okay, then there's no disagreement.
Yeah.
Objectively, that is your favorite. Objectively, my thing is my favorite.
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying that it's best for health or something like that, well, objectively, we can just look at biology maybe. Maybe we can ask a doctor. The things that go into this flavor, what is the effect on the body? And the things that go into this flavor, what is the effect on the body? And so I think we find that when we look closely at questions that seem relative, we find, and this should be a good thing, we find some objectivity.
Yeah.
Because you and I, we have different preferences. But this ground here, we have in common. We share this. If I'm saying that this ground is lava, and you're saying that this ground is snow, you're saying we should use it to build an igloo, I'm saying that, hey, we need to get the fuck out of here. I don't know how constructive or productive that is. I think there is value in respecting sort of the world. Like, yeah, we have our preferences. But as far as truth, you know, there is a certain number of twigs here.
Yeah.
You can tell me that there's 4 twigs, and you can even tell me that's true for you. I'm going to wonder whether you have a vision problem and you actually are perceiving only 4 twigs. In which case, I would want to help you and get that sorted. You know, or... What is that?
Looks like part of a shell.
Anyway, I got excited because I just had a conversation yesterday with a couple about truth. So I'll send you the link to this video, and you'll see in the this video, which will have the audio, and you'll see in the playlist some of the other videos if you're interested in seeing what other people have thought about consciousness and truth.
What is your project called? Does it have a name?
Saving the world.
Saving the world.
No,
I like it.
Basically, I very much understand how we tend to see ourselves. So I am a brain inside of this skull right here, sending signals out to these muscles to point at it. Most of what I am is here. Yeah, there's a few neurons like here that contribute, but 99% of me, of my interpretations, of my memories, of my emotions, of my perception is here. And so that's like 100 billion neurons. Okay, and if we look at it, imagine like a computer with a whole bunch of different circuits. We can imagine that each of these mechanisms, each of these circuits, each of these pieces of the whole, we can imagine as a sort of a single thing, and imagine that there are millions of these single pieces. And these single pieces are if-then sentences, sort of. Not sentences, actually, but sort of if-then rules, just like in computers. So an example of that, there's this thing called the halo effect, which is that if we perceive someone as beautiful, for instance, then we will assume that they are also more moral and more intelligent. Okay? And so we have this mechanism in our mind that when it receives the conditions of someone's appearance, this rule is, if someone is attractive, then their other traits are positive as well. Yeah. And so now you imagine a sum.
Or the other way around, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it also comes in with race as well.
Oh yeah, well so there's also the in-group, out-group bias. So that's 2 mechanisms. One, if someone seems to be a member of my kin, my group, then I will afford them leniency. I will be generous with them. Yeah. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, etc. Yeah. If I see someone that does not seem like a member of my group, and color is one of the easiest ways, then I will watch out for anything they might do. If they cause me any harm, I'll know that they're an enemy and they're trying to attack me. There's no way I'm going to excuse it as an accident, you know. And then also we evolved, all of these things we evolved with, they were at some point advantageous. In-group, out-group is a great example of one that was advantageous and is now disastrous. Yeah. Look at a place like Toronto or New York where you've got all this mix, and we still have the same tribalism programs running without sort of identifying that and working on it. And then a lot of people, everybody's racist. Every human, we are the descendants of people who were really good at saying, these are my people and I'm going to support them, and those are my enemies and I'm going to protect my people from them. We're the descendants, anybody who didn't have that, they died. So we're the descendants of people who were really, really good at that. Interesting. And the longer we deny that and like say, oh, it's weird to like be racist, the slower we're going to be able to figure out solutions to it. Yeah. All of our perceptions are colored by in-group, out-group. Now, there are other mechanisms that are going to engage as well. And so for you, for instance, there are other things that are going to sort of opt that, which means like to conflict with that. And so you're not going to often end up rejecting the out-group and only favoring the in-group. But more than you think, though. And we need to accept that about ourselves. We need to know that we are the sum of whatever mechanisms were favored by evolution. Just like our bodies evolved, that we all pretty much have 5 fingers because that's what was advantageous for holding things and so on. We have opposable thumbs for that. Just like we accept that, I think that we should consider the possibility that we're not special souls that were put on this planet, but that we are of this earth, that we are biological, physical entities, and that we can't rely on sort of the psychology that we've evolved to have. But so I'm doing these interviews because I would love to teach people about all the different biases we have, all the different heuristics, fallacies, all the different ways in which our brains don't give us a good answer, or don't produce a good answer. I'd love to talk about that. But the thing is that 90% of the people I talk to don't actually even believe that their brains are like a part of their existence or experience or whatever. Or maybe that they're a part of it, but like they'll see themselves as this sort of soul, and they'll call the brain just the physical translator, maybe. Like I'm this immaterial soul and the brain is just how my soul interacts with my body or something. Or they'll think of the brain as the engine. They'll use words like the engine, the motor, and so on. But that most of the activity of the self is sort of magic stuff.
Yeah.
And we just can't get better if we keep seeing ourselves that way.
What do you see? How do you see it then? If the mind is not this like engine, motor, computer, whatever, like this.
No, so the mind is the sum of a whole bunch of these if-then little pieces. It's not a single thing. So I call it the judge myth. Imagine a courtroom. Imagine there's a whole lot of different parties, right? A whole lot of different people. And there's this sort of central judge who hears all of these things, who's super smart, who thinks about it, and who produces an output, right? We tend to think of the mind like that, maybe. Like there's this one judge in here, and then maybe there are these other emotions or instincts or biases or whatever, but there's this central singular judge. Because since we are a singular body, we assume we are a singular mind. Now, just remove the judge from the courtroom and you actually have a better image of what the mind is. It's distributed across a whole bunch of different pieces. It feels like one thing. It isn't. Sometimes it's activity over here, sometimes it's activity over here, sometimes it's the sum of this activity, and so on. And we can actually learn the different members of the courtroom, what each of them wants, what each of them is doing, the role that they're playing. We can look at evolution, we can look at experiments in psychology and neuroscience to see, so every mind room, every mind courtroom has a bailiff, someone who is making sure that social norms are respected. And that's true. We, of course, evolved to all have a little bailiff in there. And then also another thing is there's competition between the people in the courthouse, right? And we have to remember that the mind is not a singular thing. There's competition between different interpretations and different reactions, between different memories even.
Too.
Yeah,
oh my
absolutely.
God, I was just thinking that before. Like I was like I couldn't feel like I could make a decision. I was just like so indecisive and about something that's not really that important.
Yeah. So I had this word threshing, which is where we're faced with a decision. Let's say there's 2 options. And basically we allow the mechanism, we just sit back, sort of think about the options, and you allow the mechanisms to interact with one another. And then eventually you reach some threshold of confidence. You start to lean one way or the other. Especially when you really let the mechanisms do their thing rather than focusing on the pressure or time delay or anything like that. So the more that the mechanisms feel free to just interact, and by the way, I call them its, each of these mechanisms, if, then, and it. Okay. And also it's to de-anthropomorphize the human, because we imagine ourselves these rational human souls, but actually we're just a bunch of its all interacting. So anyway, so threshing is when, you allow the its to interact until you feel one way or the other, you know, and then you go with that. Because there is a system in the brain by which, through this competition, one it will sort of win out, typically, eventually. And that's just how we evolved, because our indecisive ancestors, or our indecisive predecessors, didn't survive, right? Anybody who was like, gosh, should I go this way to hunt or this way? I don't know. And then they stay there all day.
And then they don't get food.
Right, exactly. So I think that I would love, either in my lifetime or through the work I do in my lifetime, to contribute to people, first of all, accepting that they're brains, and accepting that they are brains forged by evolution. And so we can learn a lot from the demands of our past environments as to sort of what functions we have now. And I do this all the time when I'm thinking about my own behavior or thoughts. Not all the time, okay, but regularly enough where now, why would that thought have been advantageous, or that instinct or that reaction have been advantageous for my ancestor? Oh, I see. But it's not advantageous now, or it's not advantageous for this particular situation. So I need to figure out a way to reorganize a little bit the instincts. Anyway, so I think that step 0, people realize, and we'll be the first species to do it. Neo doesn't know he's a brain. He doesn't. Most humans don't. But we'll be the first species to do it over the next 100 years. We'll achieve step 0 of self-awareness. We'll know, oh, hey, I'm a brain, I'm neurons, and they're interacting this way, blah, blah, blah. Then at that point, we can look at, okay, so what are those mechanisms doing? What are those neurons doing? What are some unhealthy behaviors or habits that you have because, you know, you're programmed with this reaction that maybe you'd like to reprogram, you know? And the worst thing is that because we don't see ourselves as these fallible brains, we see ourselves as the infallible rational souls where what we feel is true. It's called naive realism. We think we perceive the world as it is, and we judge the world correctly. Well, then you've got two people with different judgments about something that, like, is objective. Like, for instance, you've got people going to war over different gods. Because that feels true to me and that feels true to you. And sometimes those beliefs are things where, if it is true, I can't just let you continue doing that. Like, sometimes it's not just wars because I want everybody to believe what I believe, but sometimes it's because the belief that I have has to be respected, right? And nobody's going, hey, what if my interpretations are actually fucking stupid? What if my beliefs are actually stupid? What if the things that feel true to me are sirens? They shouldn't feel true. What if the things that I don't want to believe but are demonstrated by research are Porsches? What if they upset me, but gosh, what if they're true? And imagine that now we're able to agree on things. Let's say we count them. Let's say we have a tool to count every little thing here. And you and I both know sort of how the tool works, and we trust the tool, and it gives us a number. And what if we're able to both share and use that information rather than...
What's the tool?
I don't know. I don't know what the tool is for counting that, but there's lots of different tools for discovering lots of different things. So that's the idea.
Cool. I'm getting cold.
Yes.
And I'm gonna head home soon.
Yes. All right. Very good.
Shower. But
thank you.
What was your name again? It's
Eris.
Eris.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
ERIS.
Okay. Can I follow your project?
Yeah, absolutely.
On the internet somewhere, Instagram, or where are you?
On YouTube.